Elias Thorne was ruined. His last hope, an abandoned, rotting mansion on the Oregon coast, which his loyal German shepherd, Luna, helped him search. Following a forgotten maritime journal, Elias risked everything to decipher the Three Beacons puzzle. The reward was immediate, a hidden vault filled with millions in gold. But as Elias turned to leave the vault, the real test began. Blocking the exit stood a wealthy rival with a cold smile and a chilling message. "You've done the heavy lifting for me." The gold was found, but the battle had just started. Can Elias and Luna escape the trap and solve the captain's final desperate choice? Elias Thorne stood beside his battered 2005 Ford pickup, the salt spray whipping his thin, dark hair across a face etched with recent worry and old fatigue. At 38, Elias looked a decade older, his frame perpetually dusted with the fine grit of sawdust from his failing custom furniture shop in Portland. He wore a threadbare denim jacket and boots scuffed from years of standing. The crisp, unforgiving air of the Oregon coast cut through him. He was here to claim his last failure, an inheritance. Beside him, watching the churning gray Pacific, was his sole companion, Luna. She was a striking German shepherd dog of about 5 years old, predominantly gray with bold white markings across her chest and paws. Luna was a study in loyal intensity. Her ears were perfectly alert, her stance protective, but her amber eyes held a gentle intelligence that had been Elias's anchor through 2 years of bankruptcy proceedings. She didn't bark, but a low, soft whine rumbled in her chest, a sound Elias understood to mean, "This place is wrong." The place was Sea-Watch, a sprawling, skeletal mansion perched precariously on a basalt bluff overlooking the waves. It was an architectural nightmare. Gothic revival meets marine salvage, now peeling paint and missing shingles. A rusting sign near the collapsing driveway warned of an imminent demolition order from the county. Elias ran a hand over Luna's broad head. "Don't worry, girl. We're just collecting the remains of a man we never knew." The engine was barely off when Elias's phone buzzed with an incoming call from his older sister, Eleanor. She was a sharp, immaculately dressed venture capitalist from Seattle, her voice already sharp with judgment. "So, the Mansion of Misfits. You're there," Eleanor stated, skipping any greeting. "Look, Elias, stop romanticizing the past. Julian Croft has been offering to buy the land, not the relic, for months. He even emailed us both. Take the offer. Don't try to save another shipwreck, Elias. Sell it." Elias squeezed his eyes shut. "I literally just got here, Eleanor. And why does a developer in Astoria suddenly care about this one specific piece of derelict land?" "Because it's prime coastal property. Don't be dense," she snapped, her impatience clear before she abruptly ended the call. Hanging up, Elias sighed and pushed open the mansion's heavy, decaying oak door. The interior was colder than the outside air, smelling of rot, salt, and damp plaster. As he surveyed the ruined kitchen, a wide room with a large stone hearth, currently half flooded from a recent storm, Luna became agitated. She moved quickly to a wall of old, dark wainscoting, the wood paneling thick with age. Her tail, usually held in a controlled curve, gave a sharp, rapid thump against the floor. Elias was about to distract her when she began to press her nose intensely against a small, seemingly seamless panel near the hearth. She was so focused, continuously pressing her snout into the narrow seam between two planks, clearly smelling or hearing something completely hidden to him. Elias watched the gray and white fur around her snout twitching violently as she concentrated, finally making him take a step toward the suspicious spot. Elias used a rusty putty knife and a small pry bar salvaged from his truck to loosen the suspicious section of the wainscoting. The wood creaked and groaned, resisting the separation. Luna stood perfectly still beside him, her soft, focused breathing a quiet counterpoint to the labored sounds of the old house. Finally, with a loud snap of brittle wood, the panel gave way. It wasn't a spacious hidden room. It was a tight, shallow cavity carved directly into the wall's thick framework. Elias shone his phone flashlight into the void. His heart, which had just started beating a little faster, settled back to a slow, disappointed rhythm. It was empty, save for a single item, a navigational compass fixed into the back wall of the niche. It wasn't a typical compass. The brass casing was tarnished but exquisitely crafted, set with dark, aged wood. Where the cardinal points, north, south, east, west, should have been, there were intricate, stylized astronomical symbols. A crescent moon, a stylized sun, and glyphs Elias did not recognize. This was not a tool for casual sailing. It was a cryptic message, the first tangible clue. Elias secured the area and drove the short, winding distance into the nearby coastal town. He parked outside the Astoria Historical Archives, a small, austere building made of rough-cut stone. Luna waited patiently in the cab, resting her head on the seat, her amber eyes scanning the street. Inside, Elias met Mrs. Gable, the archivist. She was a woman in her late 70s, small and slight, wearing a cardigan over a floral dress, her gray hair pulled back in a tidy bun. She possessed the sharp, patient eyes of someone who knew where every secret in the town was buried. "Thorne, you say?" "Ah, one of Arian Vance's kin," Mrs. Gable murmured, her voice dry as aged paper. She led Elias to a back room smelling strongly of mildew and old parchment, laying out large maps and brittle documents. She revealed that Captain Arian Vance was not only a master mariner, but a self-taught inventor and amateur astronomer who lived at Sea-Watch during the late 1800s. He was a brilliant but eccentric man, known for his vast, though poorly documented, fortune. The official story, Mrs. Gable continued, tapping a delicate finger on a newspaper clipping dated 1894, is that he lost everything in the panic of 1893, went mad, and simply vanished. But there were always whispers he'd hidden his real wealth, creating some elaborate test for a worthy heir. Elias was engrossed in a drawing of Vance's astronomical theories when Mrs. Gable paused, her gaze thoughtful. "You're not the first to inquire lately, Mr. Thorne. A gentleman named Croft, Julian Croft, I believe, was here just last week. He spent a full day asking specifically about the Vance family genealogy and land deeds. He seemed very invested." Elias felt a cold prickle of awareness. Croft wasn't just a buyer, he was researching his way toward the same answers. A developer interested in genealogy, Elias noted, the suspicion hardening into certainty. He sounds like a rival, not a benefactor. The cold certainty that Julian Croft was hunting the same prize solidified Elias's resolve. He couldn't afford a hotel, so he and Luna spent the night curled up in sleeping bags on the least damaged parlor floor of Sea-Watch, the wind howling a mournful symphony through the broken window panes. The next morning, driven by a new urgency, Elias began a thorough search. He bypassed the dilapidated bedrooms and dusty formal rooms, heading straight for the captain's chart room, which had served as Captain Vance's personal office. The room was dominated by built-in cabinets and shelves crowded with antique scientific instruments and dried nautical charts, many crumbling at the edges. While Elias was inspecting a heavy oak cabinet, Luna pawed insistently at the bottom of a wide, low drawer. The drawer felt jammed. Luna whined softly, then used her broad, muscular gray and white snout to push repeatedly at the heavy wood. Elias realized something was trapped underneath. He knelt, braced the cabinet, and managed to force the drawer open. Sliding out from beneath it was a thick, leather-bound book, Captain Vance's Maritime Journal. Elias blew dust from the cover and flipped through the brittle pages. The elegant script detailed not sailing voyages, but Vance's philosophy and his cunning plan. The journal explicitly stated he had hidden his wealth and created a grand test, a series of clues he called the 3 Beacons, designed only for an heir who possessed true curiosity and persistence, qualities Elias finally felt he was exhibiting. The journal confirmed the first beacon. Beacon 1, the hearth, was the astronomical compass fixed in the kitchen wall. Elias moved to the room's largest feature, a magnificent, intricately detailed ship model, perhaps 3 feet long, housed in a thick glass case. Luna immediately became captivated. She ignored the ship itself, but began to intensely sniff and whimper at a small decorative wooden block near the model's bow, the noise a soft, concentrated puffing sound. Elias inspected the area Luna indicated. The block seemed to be part of the display stand, but upon closer inspection, he realized the wood grain was slightly off. Using the edge of his pocket knife, he pried the block open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay the first of the essential keys, a beautiful small bronze astronomical lens, precisely ground and polished. Beacon 2, the Atlas. Now only one remained. Elias checked the captain's private bedroom. He found an old iron-strapped sea chest, the nautical equivalent of a heavy trunk. Luna paid it no mind. Instead, she moved to the floor and began to scratch insistently at the heavy, thick floorboards directly underneath the chest. She wasn't just scratching, she was digging with an obsessive focus, clearly targeting a specific small crevice. Elias moved the heavy chest aside and used his pry bar to raise the floorboards where Luna was focused. Beneath them, concealed in a shallow cavity, was the second lens, identical to the first. Beacon 3, the anchor, was found. Elias stood in the center of the chart room, holding the two matching bronze lenses. The journal pages were spread out around him. He realized the room's dominant fixture wasn't merely decorative. A large, elaborate astrolabe, a brass instrument used for solving problems relating to time and the position of the stars, was fixed into the wall, its complex rings mimicking a miniature solar system. The instrument had two subtle indentations, perfectly sized for the lenses. "This is it, Luna," Elias murmured, his voice tight with anticipation. Luna sat close, her powerful German shepherd body a warm anchor in the cold room, watching his every move. Following the journal's cryptic hint about the setting sun and the sailor's reward, Elias waited. As the day waned, the last sliver of the sun, a fiery orange against the gray Oregon horizon, dipped toward the ocean. Elias carefully pressed the first lens, then the second, into their sockets on the astrolabe just as the sunlight streamed through the western window. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the focused light from the setting sun caught the two lenses, creating two sharp beams that converged and fused into a single point of light on the worn wooden floorboards, precisely where the beam of light struck the floor. There was a low, mechanical grinding sound, a noise like ancient clockwork turning over, and a section of the floor, about 6 feet square, slowly, inexorably, receded downward. A dark spiral staircase was revealed, leading down into a space shielded by the basalt cliff face. Holding his breath, Elias took the flashlight and the hesitant first steps. Luna followed, her usual confident gait tempered by a new, cautious posture as she sniffed the damp, confined air. The stairs led them into a dry, stone-lined vault built directly into the bluff's foundations, well above the reach of the highest tide. Inside, the beam of the flashlight swept over the glittering payoff. Not just gold, but heavy gold bars stamped with the mark of an antiquated U.S. mint, stacked neatly in a corner. Beside them were thick, yellowed packets of documents, stocks and bonds from long-defunct railroad and industrial companies, assets now worth millions. It was the wealth Captain Vance had supposedly lost in the Panic of 1893. Elias let out a shaky laugh of disbelief, running a hand over the solid gold. Luna nudged his hand, a soft sound of acceptance replacing her earlier whine. As Elias collected himself and turned to ascend the spiral stairs, the heavy floor panel above him was still settling back into place. That was when he saw him. Julian Croft was waiting in the chart room. He was a man in his early 40s, dressed in an expensive, well-tailored coat, his dark hair slicked back, and his face a mask of cold satisfaction. He held a small professional camera, likely used to monitor the house, and a triumphant smirk played on his lips. "Quite the little cryptographer, aren't you, Thorne?" Croft's voice was smooth, carrying a chilling authority. "I saw the floor give way on my monitor. Well played. Now you've done the heavy lifting for me. I am a direct descendant of Arian Vance. The land is mine by right, the treasure by conquest. Give me the key to that vault, or I'll use every legal maneuver, every loophole, to bury you and your poor, doomed little shop under that demolition order." Julian Croft's threat hung heavy in the damp air of the chart room. Luna let out a low, continuous growl, the sound vibrating deep in her chest, her gray and white fur bristling as she positioned herself firmly between Elias and the aggressive developer. "Don't be sentimental, Thorne," Croft sneered, advancing a step. "Ancestry is leverage. Move aside." Before Elias could respond, the heavy front door downstairs opened, and footsteps sounded on the creaking staircase. Mrs. Gable appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless from the climb, clutching a brittle sheaf of papers bound with an ancient red ribbon. She was wearing her usual cardigan, but her face was alight with unusual urgency. "I'm afraid that won't be necessary, Mr. Croft," Mrs. Gable said, stepping between the two men. Her voice, though soft, carried the unexpected weight of legal authority. "I was in the middle of filing these documents when you called the archives last week. You were so interested in the lineage, you forgot the final disposition." She held up the document. "I found Captain Vance's original, notarized last will and testament. It states clearly that while you may be bloodkin, the estate and all hidden assets are to be entrusted to whomever successfully completes his final task, a test of purpose." Croft's eyes narrowed, his smooth composure fracturing. He lunged suddenly, trying to snatch the papers. Mrs. Gable, surprisingly quick, sidestepped and backed toward the hallway. She discreetly fumbled in her cardigan pocket, quickly dialing 911 on her cell phone before tucking it away, muttering a quiet address to the operator. Seizing the distraction, Elias sprinted back to the open stairwell and descended into the vault. Luna, with a short, protective bark, followed her master. In the center of the cold stone chamber stood the last puzzle, a beautifully crafted mechanical sandbox model of a harbor, complete with tiny ships, docks, and two distinct channels. One channel was labeled Treasure Isle, and the other Community Port. Below the model was a brass lever system. Elias realized the true nature of Vance's test. It wasn't about solving an equation, it was a moral choice. Steering the miniature vessel toward Treasure Isle would lock the final mechanism forever, a choice of greed. Steering it toward Community Port would unlock the true inheritance. As shouting echoed from upstairs, Elias, remembering his own struggles and the quiet loyalty of his companion, reached for the levers. He felt the cold metal yield under his fingers and carefully guided the tiny ship model into the channel marked Community Port. With a soft click that resonated through the vault, a massive lead-lined compartment swung silently open. It contained not just gold, but legal documents detailing the creation of a vast trust fund, the main treasure, valued at over $200 million. The accompanying document explicitly assigned Elias, the one who chose community over greed, as the sole trustee and administrator. Moments later, the sound of police sirens wailed outside. Croft's enraged shouts were cut short by the arrival of two officers. He was legally, utterly defeated. 6 months passed. The demolition order was revoked. Sea-Watch was lovingly restored, its sea-worn stone shining again, now rededicated as the Vance Maritime Institute, a public museum, and a massive scholarship fund. Elias, his debt paid and his purpose found, stood on the newly rebuilt porch with Luna, the quiet co-guardian of Captain Vance's remarkable legacy. Elias learned, just as Captain Vance had intended, that the true treasure was never the gold, but the clear purpose found in simple, unwavering loyalty. When you have a companion like Luna, or a calling that feels right, you don't chase riches. You build a legacy rooted in shared love. If this story of partnership and perseverance resonated with your own heart, share the journey by leaving a comment below about who your loyal companion is. To continue exploring the extraordinary depth of the human-animal bond, click on the new story appearing on your screen now.